Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim, and I'm the lead pastor here, and it is my honor to welcome you here this morning. I'm so glad that you have chosen to share your Easter moments with our community. I want you to know a few things, but while I tell you those things, I'm going to let our kids in grades 1 through 4 escape because they want to do that. So before I go any further, if your kids are between, grades 1 through 4, not 5 through 7, unfortunately, guys. There's a lot of 1 through 4s today, so if you're normally here and you're expecting 5 through 7, guess what? You get to stay with us, and that's amazing. I can tell they're super excited about that, can't you? Here are the things that I want you to know about our church. That we are a come-as-you-are space. That it's our intention for you to be welcomed here no matter where you are on your spiritual journey. I don't care what you're wearing, what your body is tattooed with, what you ate for breakfast this morning. None of that matters to us. We are really, really glad that you're here. I don't care if you're a person who has questions or doubts about who Jesus is. This is a place for you to explore that. Sometimes it feels like church is just for those people who have made up their mind. But we deeply want you to know that you can come here with your questions and that we would love to have a conversation with you about them. We hope that what you find here this morning is that the people and the spaces are welcoming and a place where you can experience some freedom. It's our goal to be the most accessible, Jesus-centered church in Maple Ridge. That short video about compassion, again, June the 8th, we really want you to kind of put some time aside for that because in our world, it kind of feels like everybody's moving towards just taking care of us. And I'm pretty committed as a person, and I know that many of you are too, to making sure that the world isn't just about us. The world doesn't get better that way when we're really selfish, right? The world gets better when we decide that we're going to participate in helping others, so don't miss that thing on June the 8th. Okay. The other thing that I want you to know about our church is that we believe it's our purpose and our passion to help people grow. You know, progress is one of those core human needs. Everybody wants to move forward, and in fact, when we stop moving forward and we stop having hope for the future, we have a word for that. It's called depression, right? Like we are out of balance as people when we stop having hope. Hope for a future that is better than the one we live today is necessary for life. And I have a funny feeling that most of you, if not all of you, would say that we want to grow and progress. Yes? Right? Okay. It's to that end, then, that shared goal of making some progress that I hopefully want to begin a conversation with you this morning. And to get us all in a similar frame of mind as we start today, I want you to evaluate a few questions that I've got for you. Where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? How true are these 4 statements of your life right now? I will read them. We'll have them up on the screen behind me. Statement number 1, I have a clear sense of purpose and direction in my life. Scale of 1 to 10. Where would you say you fall on that right now? Number 2, my relationships are a source of deep connection, love, and support. Not just people in my life who annoy me. I am personally growing in character and becoming the kind of person that I want to be. I experience joy and contentment in daily life, even when things are hard. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here for a second and say that there isn't a single person in this room who gave themselves 10 out of 10 on all those statements. Am I wrong? Don't put up your hand. If you gave yourself 10 out of 10 on all these, don't put up your hand right now. That would be a bad idea. But I know that nobody did. It's my experience that there are no perfect people in this world. Hopefully, you're with me there. Because one of the sayings that we have around here is that there's no perfect people allowed, right? Like in order for us to grow and progress and do community together, we all have to admit, we all have to accept we're not quite where we'd want to be. Alongside that hunch that there are no perfect scores in the room is another hunch that all of us would like to improve from wherever we are towards being closer to 10, right? Safe hunch? Good, you're with me? Okay, I have to admit that this is a little bit more than a hunch, okay? Because it's actually a firmly educated guess. Because I recently came across something that I found completely fascinating. My mind has been wrapped up in this since I came across it. It's a project called the Human Flourishing Project. And essentially, it's a Harvard-based fellowship of researchers exploring what really makes human beings flourish. And here's the crazy thing as I read it. This is why it grabbed me. Because all the things that they say help human beings flourish, things like purpose, personal resilience, strong relationships, are the same things that the Bible has been inviting people to practice all along. It's like, parents, when you give your kids some instruction that they just won't listen to, like you tell them, like, don't touch the stove because it's hot, right? And eventually, almost all of us one day reach out and with curiosity just gets the best of us, and we don't listen to mom and dad, and we touch the stove, and we get burned. And what are you thinking in your head the day that that happens? I told you so. I told you that that would happen. It feels a little bit like for a long time we've had access to wisdom that would help us to flourish. And that's what I want to explore today. Is it possible that that wisdom is still accessible to us today? In a way, I think the Human Flourishing Project is exploring so many of the factors that Jesus would call a full life. John 10, verse 10, Jesus says this, I came that you and I might have life and life to the full. Now here's the thing, I realize that's a bold statement because I'm gonna guess another thing that you already feel like you have life. In fact, let's do a check together. I want you to turn to your left and to your right and let me know if anybody's dead. Any dead people? Anybody find a dead person? Again, probably don't put your hand up. It'd be kind of insulting. Okay, so we're all alive. Everybody in the room is alive, right? Then how can Jesus offer people something that they already have? That question is at the heart of Easter. Today, I want to talk about the very essence of what it means to be human. And it's this, that it is possible to exist without living. That access to the fullest human life was made possible through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Existence is survival. Life is thriving with God. One is breath, merely breathing in and breathing out. The other is purpose and peace and joy. And if that's true, and if it's true that the cross is the means by which God has enabled that life, then the resurrection, the thing that we come here to celebrate today, is not just a moment in history. It's your invitation to live. So this morning, I want to explore the Easter story account in the book of Luke, specifically chapter 24, because I think it's here that the scriptures draw a clear distinction between human existence and real life. If you're not terribly familiar with the Bible, that's okay. If you have one on your phone or with you, you brought one because you felt like you needed to, that's great. Look, Luke is about 2/3 of the way through the Bible, after the big page that says the New Testament, after the books of Matthew and Mark, okay? Now, if you didn't bring a Bible, good news, I'm going to put the verses up on the screen so you can read them anyway. Here's what Luke chapter 24, verses 1-6 tell us. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women who had been with Jesus took spices they had prepared and went to Jesus' tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly, 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, here, listen to this. Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. And that's why every Easter we get together, we say those words. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Good for you. Good job. So I want you to imagine with me. Come with me. Come with me to Jerusalem. It's early in the morning. And even in the desert, it's cold and uncomfortable. But it doesn't matter. Because these women walked quietly through narrow stone streets because they had a job to do. The sun wasn't up yet. The air was still cool. Their hands are a little numb. Their eyes are puffy. They've been crying. Their hearts have been crushed. And they carry spices to honor Jesus and try to make his passing a little bit more palatable for the people that go visit. These are tokens of final love for someone they never expected to see again. They're in pain. They're in grief. And yet they have to carry on. I wonder if you can put yourself in that position this morning. Have you ever been in a space where you were under deep grief but had to function anyhow? Have you had this experience before? I remember grief is a part of the story of our family, as it is so many families. We had a son that came into the world 3 months early and only stayed with us for 3 hours. And it was the most gut-wrenching, horrible experience I've ever had. In the midst of that experience, I had to go to Walmart to buy something. I don't even remember what it was. But I just remember standing there, almost feeling like I'm not in my own body anymore. I can't imagine how I'm moving through this store and wondering to myself, how many other people here might be in exactly the same place that I am? That feeling is what I imagine when people use the phrase, the walking dead. And that was these women on this particular day. Remember, they had put all their hope in Jesus. They gave him everything that they had, all of their trust, all of their confidence, all of their hope, and now he was dead, gone. And in their experience and ours, the dead don't do anything else for you once they die. The dead are the most reliable human beings on the planet, because you know where to find them and they're always in the same place. That's it. But death is not what they found that day. They show up at the tomb and what they find is this glowing man. And it says in their frightened state, I'm like, yeah, if some guy appears as if by magic next to me and he is glowing like lightning, I'm more than a little bit frightened. Like, I'm probably doing what they're doing. It says they fell down, and sometimes we think they fell down because they wanted to worship. They fell down because they were afraid. Like all they could think to do was like when you get attacked by a bear, roll up on the ground and stay there and don't move. And he says to them, why are you looking for the living among the dead? If they hadn't been so full of grief and totally frightened, they might have yelled at him and said, what are you talking about? I'm not here looking for the living. I'm here looking for the dead. He died. I was there when they nailed him to the cross. I was there when they took down his body. I was there when Joseph of Arimathea took him to this tomb. I know that he is dead. But what they were about to discover was that while Jesus was worth every ounce of their trust, their confidence, and their hope, because he was more than they ever hoped for. This is probably the understatement of the year, but human beings are a bit of a funny species, aren't we? I think all of us live with some sense of discontent. Think back to those questions I asked. Are you 100% happy with where you are? No, and neither am I. Things are not as they should be. This isn't the world we think we should be living in. That's why we're discontent all the time. How do I know that? Basic observation. Like turn on the news for a quick second and just see what it says. Go on social media and participate in a conversation if you dare. Right? People are concerned about their life in this world, which is what makes our resistance to the exploration of God so confounding sometimes. Because look, if there's any chance at all, that Jesus is who he claims to be, any chance that by following his way, listening to his teachings, absorbing his wisdom could actually make our lives better, why wouldn't we give it some serious time? So often, we are like these women, looking for the dead among the dead, because we know there's no salvation in politics. There's no salvation in the things that we can accumulate for ourselves. There's no salvation in a good retirement fund. But we keep going back to that empty grave time after time, trying to find the hope and happiness that our lives are missing. Is it possible? Is it possible that we have been lulled into being content with confusing life and existence, into settling for existing, in being numb and distracted as long as all the stuff around us keeps us from noticing what we've lost? But what if God really did give himself to humanity in the person of Jesus? And what if Jesus was meant to stand as a disruption to the loop of mere existence? What if in Jesus, God has told such a powerful story about the difference between existence and life, because while death would be the end of our existence, death had no power over the life that Jesus Christ had. And what's amazing is that while it is so concentrated in the story of Jesus, it wasn't new. The scriptures have been telling the same story from the very beginning, and we missed it. The concept of life being wrapped up in God is right at the very beginning of the story that the scriptures tell. Right? You look at Genesis for a quick second and the story that it tells about the beginnings of humanity. It says in that moment that God breathes into mankind, and then we became living beings. Did you ever ask yourself why the focus on the word living? Again, it seems a little bit redundant. Adam and Eve had already been created. And just like everybody else, we did the check, right? Everybody here is alive. They seemed to be alive, but it wasn't until God breathed into their lungs that they became living beings. Maybe from the very beginning of the story, God has been trying to tell us that we are confused about the essence of life, that without him, there can be no real life. And so, as Adam and Eve did, when we choose to reject God in the garden, God says, surely you will die. But the problem is they didn't die, right? If you know the story, they didn't die. God said they would die, but they didn't die. So what was he talking about? He wasn't talking about the end of their existence. God was trying to tell us that we are prone to choose existence without him over life in his name. And so all throughout the scriptures, God leaves us hints, tells the story again and again and again. And in one place, he just says it really plainly. I set before you today life and death. Choose life. In other words, choose to be in a relationship with me and know what it means to really live. That story that started at the beginning of us is still the same story we're telling today. If you want to know what God is really trying to do, it's this. This is it. It's super simple. God is always trying to lead us to intersections, places of choice. And these choices come in many shapes and sizes over the course of our life. But the most important one is fundamentally this: will you choose him and life or settle for mere existence? I want you to take a look at this cross for a quick second. On Friday, we all came and Pastor Ken asked us to place a red ribbon which represents our sin, okay? Now, sin is a complicated word because it's often been used to elicit feelings of guilt and shame so that people like me will support, or you'll support me and you'll do what I ask, and it kind of helps to like reinforce religious authority and institutions. It can be used improperly. But those are not God's motivations in telling us about our sin. God cares so deeply about our sin because he cares so deeply about each and every one of us. There isn't a sin that you can think of that doesn't boil down to somebody getting hurt. Somebody you know, somebody around you, or your relationship with God. That's the issue with sin, is that we all do it, and it all, in every way, damages our relationships. The world cannot be as it should be when we're all wrapped up in the things we do to hurt each other. And in the process, as we hurt those that God loves, we hurt our relationship with him too. And mending broken relationships is why God cares about removing our sins. Now, some of you might have noticed that I said we put red ribbons on the cross. Those are clearly not red ribbons. They're white, right? We did that on purpose. It's a representation of what Jesus' life does for us. We switched them out to remind us there are hundreds of people in this room today who have chosen to live their life modeled after Jesus, accepting his offer of life and experiencing growth in that full life that Jesus talks about. The means by which God provided that was Jesus. And remember, sometimes we forget this, right? Like Jesus' sacrifice is God's sacrifice. God wraps himself in our humanity and comes to us knowing that we're incapable of doing this for ourselves. So he comes to us and chooses to give of himself to prove that there is a life that conquers death. That the end of our existence need not be the end of us. The greatest act of sacrifice ever recorded. And in response, many of us choose to live our lives to serve others just like Jesus did. And that's how our lives and the lives of everyone around us can become more full. Friends, I deeply believe we need to change the goalposts on what living really means and what really makes us flourish. Relationship with God, relationships with people that are life-giving, community, making meaningful contributions, having purpose, finding joy, the elements, in other words, of the life that Jesus modeled for us are ultimately far more important to your happiness in the car that you drive or the money in your savings account. And on this, Harvard and Jesus agree. We're so often confused about the nature of life and death. We treat death as though it's non-existence. But in the scriptures, it's reframed. Death is really existence without God. And if you look at it from those lenses, then death starts to look a lot like us. Death looks like envy. Death looks like greed. Death looks like jealousy and violence and selfishness. Death looks like humanity without God's participation or his wisdom. Death is not simply an ethereal concept or an end to our existence. No, death is the absence of God in our lives. Death is what life looks like without faith. Death is what life looks like without love. Death is what life looks like without hope. Death is what life looks like without God. It is not something that waits for us on the other side. Death is something that many of us are experiencing right here, right now. And so it feels like Easter is always one of those moments of decision that I mentioned earlier. Maybe today you've experienced some kind of resonance with the things that I'm talking about. Maybe a realization for the first time or the first time in a long time that God has a name. And that name is Jesus. And a little bit later, we're going to pray together. And maybe today is a day where you would say, you know what, I want to give my life to Jesus. I want to dedicate myself to serving others in the way of Jesus, to growing and finding purpose in who he is and what he was all about. But here's something else that I know. Most of you are Canadians. And Canadians take a really long time to decide about anything. I don't know what it is. Something in our culture, something about the niceness and the there's something about Canadians. We just take a longer time to decide. So, I've got another idea for you this morning. You might not be in a place right now where it's like, I'm ready to dive in wholehearted, head first into this Jesus life, Tim. But what if you just came back here for a little while? Over the next number of weeks between now and Father's Day, we are going to take a journey and explore this idea of human flourishing. And I'm going to put in front of you, both some of the data that Harvard's come up with and some of the places where I think the scriptures have been talking to us about this for a really long time. And what if through a journey of a month or 6 weeks, you actually could start to improve on some of those questions that I asked you at the beginning? What if Harvard's right? What if you can't do that alone? Because here's one of the things I didn't tell you before. Do you know what one of the most important aspects of people who grow and flourish is? There are people who find themselves in religious communities. Now, I don't really like the word religious, okay? I think it's a complicated word. I think it has a lot of broken connotations for a lot of people. What we mean here is a group of people who are trying to figure out life and faith together. We have designed our conversation for the next number of weeks for those of you who just need to try it on for a little bit and see what it's like. I would deeply love for you to come back because there is space here for everyone. That's why I want you to know that we're a come as you are place, right? There are more than 100 individual adult lives represented on that cross. And you will find people here from every walk of life, from all kinds of different circumstances, family people and single people and young people and older people. And there's space here for everyone. That's why we say you can come just as you are. You don't have to do anything between now and next week to continue to explore this life that Jesus has. We will dig deep into some of these aspects of flourishing together. And you could do it alone, but you wouldn't be as successful because community is one of the essential elements of human flourishing, and particularly religious communities. The data is irrefutable. So, I began the talk asking you to do a little bit of self-evaluation. I'm going to ask our musicians to make their way back up here. And my simple invitation is this. Look, you are welcomed here. If you don't feel like you're welcomed other places, if you haven't found a community that's for you yet, I would love for you to consider this to be a place where you could ask questions and explore and see if Jesus really does make a difference in your life. Jesus didn't come to make you religious. He came to give you life, and life to the full. The first Easter ever recorded was a turning point for humanity. The life of Jesus is still at the apex of how we determine time as a species. And I believe in that moment, what it means to be human came into full focus. So if that was a turning point for us all, maybe this Easter is a turning point for you. What we're going to do is, you might have noticed if you're here on a regular basis, we usually sing more songs than that before I get up and do my thing. But we've kind of saved some of the songs for the end today. Because one of the things I think that is really valuable about this space and this time is the opportunity it gives us to slow down and to think and to reflect. And we want to give you that gift today. The world we live in is so full of hustle and bustle. Is that even a term people use? It's probably not. It's so full of things and stuff and commitments and other people's priorities that maybe just like 15 minutes of reflection and stillness and honest searching, letting you explore some things that are going on in your life and in your heart that you don't often give time for will be a valuable gift this morning. So we would ask you to stand up. Join these guys. They've got to stand for the next couple minutes. Don't let them do it alone. And sing some songs with us and take these moments to reflect.